Hiya folks, this is Jordan and Kurt from the Daring Reporter. Next on our rundown we have the competitive and technical podcasts. Kurt, what are some podcasts you could recommend if I wanted to up my Hearthstone game?
Well, Jordan, to start, I would recommend Concede. This week, they discuss the current meta and tournament news. Wait, why are we spoiling it? You just have to listen as it's starting right now.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greet my greetings.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello and welcome to episode 135 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. Joining us from Gadgetan, New York, hi, it's me, Ridiculous Hat. We took a week off last week. If you haven't heard our message, feel free to go back and listen. It was brief, but we took a week to mourn the passing of our dear friend Toast the Badger. But we are back here to talk about the competitive side of the game, and joined back from his cross-world vacation from Karazhan, California, we have Bodicus.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Excited to be back.
Where were you exactly?
I was in China. We went to Beijing, Shanghai, and somewhere else. It was so fast. Like, it was 10 days, but it was, we were only in places for like a day or two. But it was cool. It was a interesting trip. It was government funded, so like the whole trip was like $800 for a round trip flight, and the hotels we were staying in were like super nice. But on the I guess for some people it's like a downside, but for me it was kind of cool. Like every day they take you to a sales pitch. But those were like the parts I enjoyed the most about it. Like, so we went to like a jade factory and a silk factory and like a tea place. It was cool.
That sounds really interesting. I had no idea that you were getting there on the cheap.
Yeah, it was like super, super worth it. Definitely got more than our money's worth there. Plus our tour guides were like insanely good. One of them was super hilarious. So yeah, it was a great trip.
But we all know you, Bodicus. For those of us that have listened to your Blizzlet episode, you're a little picky when it comes to food. How was that experience?
I ate a lot of rice and eggs and bread.
Well, so just like being at home.
When it wasn't fried rice.
Oh, yes.
I also brought a ton of snacks with me because I knew I was going to need to do that. So I ate like Cliff Bars and stuff.
Some of that authentic Chinese cuisine.
Yeah, I had to stay alive.
Well, I'm glad you're alive. Welcome back. Welcome home. And we have a guest as well. Appa is actually out. He's stuck in the maelstrom with portal sickness, I guess, whatever disease they get in the maelstrom. I don't know. He's not feeling too great. But we will get him back on next week. We have a guest from the Cow Level, Nebraska. He made that up. I am nowhere near that witty. We've got Tomlock from Team Swagoin. Welcome, Mr. Tomlock.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. And for those that don't know, Swagoin, they ran that awesome tournament that we talked about in the past couple episodes, and we're going to be doing some partnership work with them. How many people ended up in that tournament? It was like 70-ish?
Yeah, 71 people signed up, but whenever you run a tournament on Battlefy, you always have some people that don't check in. So we had 55 participants in the tournament.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show, and shout out to my buddy Dyrus Bear, who did 5th place in that tournament. He's a winner.
Yep, just enough to finish right outside of the prizes.
Don't remind me, or more accurately, don't remind him. But anyways, so before we go any further, Concede, of course, is supported in large part by you, the listener. We're always grateful to our patrons. If you'd like to find out how you can support us, receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. Big thanks to Cody M., Trey H., and Michael C. for joining us as a patron. Thank you very much for your support. And we're going to talk to our buddy Tomlock about, well, hey, why are you on this crazy little show we have? Do I have a bumper for this? I should really have a bumper for this. I feel like
Moo.
That's not a bumper, that's a cow. Here, we're gonna do this one.
Everyone, get in here!
That works. Hi Tom. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Yeah. So I have a 5-month-old, and he is currently asleep. And something that I can tell you, because I know that you are not a parent yourself, is that all parents are always happy when their kids are asleep.
So I hadn't had firsthand experience of that, but I feel like that was a conclusion I could have surmised. But I appreciate the verification. So I'm glad that you were in a good spot. And 5-month-old, congratulations. And it's quite an adjustment from not having a child, I assume.
Yes, that's true. Significantly different.
Yes. Well, in terms of non-child related things, tell us about who you are and your gaming background and how you got into Hearthstone.
Yeah. So my name is Brandon. Brandon Downs. If you want to look up my name, you'll be able to see where I came from, which is Magic the Gathering. Much like many Hearthstone players, I came from Magic the Gathering. I actually met my wife playing Magic the Gathering semi-professionally. Both of us ended up playing on the Pro Tour. We always tested together. It was awesome. As time went on, though, the obligations from playing Magic, the travel, all those things became more onerous. And that was right about the time Hearthstone was coming out. And let me tell you what, Hearthstone is amazing because you can play it wherever you want and whenever you want. So that is, which is extremely different than Magic. And that's the transition that I made. I really, really think I still really love Magic. I don't play it anymore, but I still think about Hearthstone in Magic terms. I still talk about things like who's the beatdown. I mean, Hearthstone has so many terms borrowed from Magic anyway that it's second nature. But if there's ever a metaphor that the listeners don't understand, I apologize, but it came from Magic.
I think we can probably help translate a little bit. But yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there are so many people that after, I don't want to say hitting adulthood, but like the burden of a full-time job or of a life outside of the weekend warrior lifestyle in Magic is time and money consuming in a way that is difficult to fathom. And I think the story is not dissimilar outside of the meeting your wife and the Pro Tour thing is probably pretty special. The I got older and didn't have the time and money to devote to Magic is probably pretty common.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, you said your name is Brandon Downs, but your handle is Tom Locke. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Day 9, actually. And when StarCraft 2 came out was when I started watching Day 9. If you guys remember way back in the day when StarCraft 2 came out. And he had this game that he would play with usernames called Philosopher, Pokemon, or Pharmaceutical. And so you encounter someone on the StarCraft 2 ladder, and you decide if their name is a philosopher, a Pokemon, or a pharmaceutical. So, for example, Bodicus, absolutely a Pokemon, 100%.
Yes, definitely.
So, yeah, Tom Locke is a portmanteau of my two favorite philosophers, John Locke and Thomas Paine, because I'm very American.
Okay, cool. Interesting to know.
So, in terms of Hearthstone, we already kind of asked why this game over other games, but what approach do you generally take when you play Hearthstone in terms of like style of deck or approach to the game? Are you more competitive? Are you more casual? And what kind of decks do you find yourself playing in? What kind of formats?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely, I think you've explained this term before, but I'm absolutely a spike. I am a competitive player that wants to win tournaments. I have that spike attitude. I found my most success in Magic with aggressive towards mid-range decks, and that has been the same in Hearthstone. I will challenge anyone to any sort of match where I'm playing a Zoo deck. That's my favorite deck to play because it really is that aggro to mid-range deck where it adapts to the matchup extremely well, but it's playing creatures and playing spells that help the creatures.
Freeze Mage. Go.
Yeah, I do not enjoy playing Freeze Mage, but I did enjoy playing against it for the first 7 years it existed before it got old. But I also had a lot of success in Magic with combo decks, specifically Blue-Red Storm. If you remember that deck, I had success before anything of it was banned, after the first card from it was banned, Seething Song, and then after it experienced the second ban, I still had success with the deck. So,
Man after my own heart.
yes, if you're asking me to cast counter spells or AoEs, I'm not into that. Oh, sorry, counter spells from Magic. I will definitely play Tempo Mage and cast some counter spells. I'm super down with that. But no, Edelweiss is a member of Team Swagoin, and her and I have pretty much awesome, pretty much opposite playstyles and preferences. She is amazing at control decks, and I am not. But I play a little bit of everything because you got to play what the best decks are. That's absolutely my approach.
So, to analogize a little bit, Priest is probably your least favorite class.
That's not true, actually.
Okay.
I have a ton of wins with Priest because Dragon Priest was an amazingly fun mid-range deck.
Okay. So then, picture becoming clear. It's all about the hard control. It's just really not your thing. But in terms of what Blue-Red Storm would be in Magic, it's almost like a Malygos Rogue. Mally Rogue or Freeze. Freeze Mage is a little bit too control. I think it's more like a Mally Rogue or something that's a lot of burst damage from hand after a little bit of build-up and setup. That's, I think, the closest I can get to.
Miracle Rogue is probably closer because you draw a lot of cards. You want to draw a lot of cards till you have a critical mass and can do a bunch of damage over the course of a turn or two.
Yeah, Magic. It's oftentimes hard to make these metaphors because Magic is a much more powerful game in general. But I like those.
Makes sense. Yeah, and for those that don't know Magic, it's we're not going to talk too much about specifics of the game because we could be here all day. But there's really ways to interact with your spells and build up combo potential that doesn't exist in Hearthstone in anywhere near the same fashion. And it's hard to explain and relate, but it's basically I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like you have the ability to generate inertia and build on your own ability to cast more spells on your own turn in a way they can't really do in Hearthstone. So anyways, to avoid getting on specifics, let's talk about something completely different. Tell us about Team Swagoin. Where do y'all come from? How did you become involved? Tell us about the pinnacle of Nebraska organized gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a LAN center that opened in Nebraska about 2.5 years ago called Portal LAN Arcade, and there was a gentleman that decided he wanted to start an esports organization. So literally anybody that played a video game could start a team with him, and one of those video games was Hearthstone, and they had tryouts, and that organization was called Blind Fire Gaming. I use the term organization loosely, but I ended up through my interactions with the players on that team, becoming kind of just a leader of a group of Hearthstone players, and basically an unofficial team captain. And as Blind Fire Gaming unraveled, I kept the Hearthstone team together. One of the Hearthstone players knew a gentleman named Everest that was interested in starting an esports team, and he took over ownership, and that's where the name change came in to Team Swagoin. It is a portmanteau again of the terms swag and Swagoin. It is not a name I came up with, but it is a very unique name. And we've been Team Swagoin now for about a year and a half. We recruited outside of Omaha slightly before August of 2016. We have players in Delaware, Missouri, Pennsylvania, New York, and Omaha, of course. So that's the story of Team Swagoin. As time has gone on, we have adjusted our mission. Initially, we started as a group that just wanted to help our team to win Hearthstone tournaments. But now we're opening up to everybody. We want to take Hearthstone players from amateurs to professionals. This is why Concede was a perfect target for a partnership. Making the competitive side accessible is absolutely part of taking amateurs to professionals, and that is what Team Swagoin will become. We're gonna have Team Swagoin is a group of members, of creators, and of the Hearthstone team, and we're all gonna be working together to help each other make that move to professional.
Is the ship name Swagoin Concede? Do we have to do that? Swagoin. We'll work it out.
I like Swagoin because it rhymes with groin. Don't. Excuse me.
You're a man after my own heart now. So, anyways, who are some of the players? Do we know any of them?
Yes, absolutely. So, a couple episodes ago, you had Edelweiss on. She is a member of Team Swagoin. We've got in Nebraska, we've got Troy McClure. We've got myself, Tom Locke. We've got Animore. If you have seen him active in the THL or the Concede community. We've got Brasky out of Omaha, and we've got Earl out of Omaha. Out of Philadelphia, we got Edelweiss. Out of New York, we've got the Flyest Lie. Out of Delaware, we've got Steffi. And out of Missouri, we have a gentleman named Cap'n Crunch. That is the team so far.
Wow. Yeah, I know Lai has had some success. If I recall correctly, Captain Crunch has done pretty well in the prelim circuit as well. His name sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he's done well at DreamHack events.
Okay.
So, yes.
Yeah, and then Animore, for those that don't know, is the leader of Tim's team. If you haven't seen the video about Tim's team, there will be a link in the show notes. I strongly recommend looking it up. You might cry, but it's a good cry. I promise. And there's a happy twist ending to that video, but I won't spoil it here. But if you go watch the video, message me and I'll tell you the twist ending. It's a wonderful thing. That's pretty cool, man. So what are some good ways for us to engage with your players' content or the rest of the organization, the casters, the organizers? How can we connect with Team Swagoin?
So yeah, Swagoin has a Facebook, Swagoin Gaming. It has a Twitter, Swagoin Gaming. We also are, of course, active in the community. It's very important if you want to make that transition from amateur to professional, or even if you just want to have more fun with Hearthstone. As a listener, you're already taking part in the community. One of the things that we're doing with the community is we are casting for UHL. 4 of us have casting experience and wanted to be more involved in something like that. And you'll see us throughout the week in casting United Hearthstone League matches. We also host a monthly tournament. The next month's tournament will be for members of the Swagoin community. That'll be people on the Hearthstone team. That'll be anybody that creates Hearthstone content that is in line with the mission of helping amateurs become professionals, which is almost all Hearthstone content. Or we will have a membership fee, a monthly membership fee to join the Swagoin community if you're more of a kind of, not necessarily a lurker, but you're not a content creator. But you really want to be involved with the Swagoin project. We'll have an announcement of that price and what the first prize support for our first tournament will be for those folks.
All right. Well, that sounds like a fantastic plan. Make sure to go check out Team Swagoin over on their website and their various social media channels over in United Hearthstone League, which is it's just a wonderful place, especially if you're me. I'm a big fan. And Bodicus, who is
Same.
casting, and
Same. Big
actually,
fan.
we're all pretty involved.
Appa too.
Yes, Appa too. We're all united over there. So Brandon, Tomlock, do you want to do a podcast?
My whole life.
Well, that dream comes true right now. In fact, it's already been true. So let's talk about our ladder experience, or if it's more applicable to you, your Brawliseum experience. And why don't you start us off, Mr. Brandon, and let us know how that went for you?
Yeah, I got back from vacation at the end of April, and I have only played 10 games of ladder. I've only played the Tempo Mage deck. I love it. I think it's an incredibly wonderful, complicated enough deck where play style matters a lot. But I did also play one Brawliseum. I played my free Brawliseum, and I played a Spiteful Priest tuned to beat Paladin. By that I mean I played a Dire Mole, and I did not play Vicious Fledglings. So, and in that Brawliseum, I ended up going 12-2. So,
wow,
I was very excited. And I took my first loss after 7 wins, and then my second loss after 11 wins. So it was super fun, and I'm super excited to see that Spiteful is still a good deck. There are a lot of players playing it this weekend, and that played it last weekend as well. I highly recommend it as a deck. Tempo Mage, I think it kind of has to be your style of deck for you to really enjoy playing it right now, because if you play like a little, if you play poorly with Tempo Mage or draw poorly, it's going to be not a very close game. So that's been my experience.
My experience with Tempo Mage has always been if your draws line up with how they decide to play around your secrets, it can be very frustrating to play, which is why I've never really been a fan of playing Mage, but I understand that it is a good deck that wins games. I just avoid it at all costs if I can. I ended up playing it towards the end of one of the seasons because I felt like it was well positioned, but sometimes you draw the explosive runes when you needed to draw the counter spell, and they happen to have like the card that plays around explosive runes, where like, because I hear a lot of people talking about playing the right secret to like next level your opponent, and it's like sometimes you just play the secret that they happen to have the card that plays around it well, and so that's why I get frustrated with that deck.
Yes, this is what I should have said earlier, is if there is a motto to the Tomlock playstyle, it's 1, you're probably more lucky than your opponent, and 2, sometimes they don't have it. Sometimes they just don't have the answer.
Very true. Yep.
Yeah.
That's also my knife people have spoken about my knife jugglers versus other people's knife jugglers, and my guy's got really good with his knives. He's pretty accurate.
Yeah, well, Zalea talked about that a little while ago, about how he's practicing his juggles to make sure they always hit, and like it really makes a big difference. It's very important. Probably a lot of practice left over from the Flame Waker days. So, Bot, what have you been playing? I assume not Tempo Mage.
No, definitely not. So I got back from China or I wasn't able to play pretty much at all over there. Like my internet connection was spotty. I did end up finishing top 1000, which I was happy with considering I wasn't playing at all. So I at least locked up 2 points, but hopefully hopefully those 2 points won't have to matter and I can get better finishes for the next 3 months. But it was a struggle to get back into it for me because I came back and I was a little upset that they did Brawliseum because I had been waiting for standard Brawliseum for like a year or whenever the last time they did it. So I really wanted to play it. I started playing when I got home, and of course I wanted to go to the deck that was good right before I left, which was Quest Rogue, and queued up my first game, played against like some random priest deck that was playing a bunch of 2-drops and beat them pretty easily. But then I queued into 3 paladins, and that did not go well. So I was like, okay, enough of this Quest Rogue nonsense. Let's queue up even paladin. I got my 4 wins and then queued into 3 warlocks in a row. And I was like, okay, I guess we'll queue warlock. And I actually got like 7 wins with warlock, so I was pretty okay with that. But I wish I had more time with it. Is really what comes down to it. Is I wish it was around for more. But now back to ladder, back to what I'm happy doing. So finding some sweet decks thanks to Hat, and been jamming some Mind Blast Priest and Taunt Druid.
Yo, can we talk for a second here about Squashling? Can we
Oh
talk
my
for a second
God.
about Squashling?
I literally cast the one game of you in UHL. I saw you play the 2 Squashlings in your deck, and I was sold instantly. Just I didn't get a chance to see European playoffs, so I didn't get to see how good it was then. But literally, you played it twice in that UHL match, and I was like, "Holy cow, this card is nice!" And sure enough, I played it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this card's good."
It's criminally underplayed. Okay, so let me give some background here. First of all, I hit Legend without even... This is the easiest Legend climb I've ever had. And part of it is because my friend Happy Feet, who I've known for years and years, we met as BNet friends. I added him after we had a Control Warrior Justicar mirror. And the only reason that he won was because I got the coin. But we messaged each other after I think it was like a 35-minute game, and we've been friends for years since then. And he is currently top 30 legend with King Togwaggle Druid in standard. So he got
savage.
In the Brawliseum, he got 2 12 wins and 11 win with it, and then is currently top 30 legend with Togwaggle Druid. So pretty much anything, he's a great deck builder. So pretty much any deck he puts together, I try out. And before he was playing Togwaggle Druid, which is far beyond my abilities, he was trying out Taunt Druid, and he said so many people are playing Taunt Druid, but they cut Ferocious Howl and Tempo Mages everywhere, and you just put Ferocious Howl in, and then you beat the Tempo Mages. So I said, okay, I'll try it out. And I played the deck for 13 games starting at rank 3, and I lost 1 of them, and I won the other 12. And then I was Legend. It just kind of happened. And I was 6-1 against Warlocks, and that was my only loss, and it was because I messed up 3 times in that game. And it's like, one was swinging with the Frostmourne first and not getting a Rin back. One was wasting a Naturalize. I forget what the third mistake was, but I messed up a few times and I could see it. In every other game, I just did what my deck does and immediately won the game. So, there was a good amount of Wild Growth on 2 into Oaken Summons on 3. I'm not going to say I didn't have somewhat fortunate draws. And my sample size is super duper low right now, but I just played the deck 13 times and then was Legend. So
That card. I also played that deck, and you're right, it was very good, but I did lose to Tempo Mage because they went Arcanologist into Mana Worm Coin, oh my god, the 4/3.
Oh, Kirin
Kirin
Tor.
Mage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mana Worm Coin, Kirin Tor Mage, Counterspell, and then played 2 fireballs on the taunts that I played, and I died.
Yeah, I played against Mage only twice in that run, and I got the coin both times, so I just tested for the counterspell. It was explosive runes both times, and then I didn't play a minion for 7 turns, because I would just go coin, howl, spellstone, and then I would play summons, and I would have minions but wouldn't play minions until I was playing a Tar Creeper, an Ironwood Golem, or a Primordial Drake, and then I don't care about your 6 damage, it doesn't do anything. So small sample size, pretty fortunate runs. I do feel confident saying this deck absolutely farms Warlock. It's really, really good against Warlock. But then also in UHL, I happened to get a nice 3-0 matchup against Chris. Now, I did profile him a little bit. We've been THL teammates for 5 seasons now. I know he loves aggro. And so I played the hardest control lineup I possibly could with Zetalot's #1 legend, Mind Blast Control Priest, which is where the Squashlings come in. Card was unbelievable. There was one time where like I just dominated combat by healing my minion, attacking with it, healing it again, and healing my face. There's another time where I drew a couple cards with Northshire Cleric with it, and just developed the board at the same time. And Mind Blast Priest, substantial mage, so it's a very large mage, and then Control Warlock, not Q because I'm bad with Q, but just straight up Control because I wanted to play against aggressive decks. So happened to get a sweep there, worked out pretty well for me, and I'm 3-0 in UHL now. So fairly happy about that going into next week against Spivey. So I have to play against the other 1600 Dust host and the returning runner-up. So we'll see if that grudge match
he's
stands.
He's going to be out for blood.
Yeah,
I could tell you that much. But you get all your 9 classes back at your disposal. So I don't know if you've already chosen classes, but that'll definitely be a matchup to watch, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, we haven't chosen classes yet. I'm going to try and set up a time that we can make sure it gets cast because I think that'll be a lot of fun to play. And Ferris, when he reseeded the division, said he really wanted to make sure that those rivalries could exist. And I think that's a good one to maintain. The Spivey Hat rivalry. I'm looking forward to that match, no matter what happens there. But yes, I also get the feeling that the competitive instincts will be a little turned up for that match. And that's ladder for this week, so let's take a second here and have Bodicus talk about some news.
So a little while ago, I believe there was a post on Reddit where who was it? Was it Iksar?
It was Iksar.
Iksar. People were talking about when Naga Sea Witch. They're just asking when Naga Sea Witch is getting changed because I guess it's kind of dominating. Well, maybe not dominating, but is quite frustrating to play against over there in Wild. And he came up with this post that said that they are currently looking at a bunch of cards, not just Sea Witch, about making some changes. And so they actually had a ton of cards in here that we're now thinking might be getting some changes, at least a few of them. But they're looking to do this after all of the HCT prelims are kind of over, which I think is really good. I do like that they're, these pro players have been working for so long on their lineups, and just like having a change come at this time would just be catastrophic to a lot of pro players. So I like that they're waiting. But at the same time, it's kind of awkward to announce this early because now we kind of know that changes are coming. And like I'm in the camp where I don't know that we need changes in standard. I do think that Naga Sea Witch should probably be changed. That is not necessarily a strategy I like having over there in Wild. But some of the other cards they're talking about are Sunkeeper Terem, Call to Arms, the Paladin hero power when you have Baku in your deck, Spiteful Summoner, Possessed Lackey, Blood Reaver Gul'dan, Dark Pact, Kobold Librarian, and Quest Rogue and Doomguard. So these are all kind of like a bunch of hot button cards / decks. I don't know what do you think? You've been kind of vocal that you really like the meta right now. What do you think about this?
Okay. I've thought about this a lot. First of all, Naga Sea Witch, I think it's just a really significant speed trap in the format, in that if you can't win by turn 5 and your deck doesn't have pressure, there's some games you're just going to lose to it. And I think the design combined with the giant synergy is kind of poor. Brandon, have you played a lot of Wild?
Actually, I have. In the month of April, I climbed all the way up to rank 2 or 3. I don't remember exactly, but I played a bunch of Paladin. I played that Eggs Paladin. that you all have talked about. And
Oh, Breakfast
I
Pally,
also-
yeah.
Yeah, Breakfast Paladin. Yes. I also played a lot of Big Priest in Wild. So those were the two. I like to grind ladder with 2 decks. Kind of, I like the Bayesian approach of playing 2 decks and then switching when you lose. So that's how I climbed in Wild. So I played a bunch of games.
So tell me about
I-
your experience with Naga Sea Witch and her giant friends.
Yes. I did not play a single game against Naga Sea Witch until rank 5, and that immediately became half of my games.
Ooh. So you're saying that all ranks cost 5 or less? There's something there.
That's yeah, I liked it. So, however, that meant that I started playing a lot more Breakfast Paladin than I did Big Priest because I would immediately lose with Big Priest, and then I would have a couple wins with Breakfast Paladin before I lost with it. Because a quality still in standard as well as in wild is extremely powerful against decks that have a swing turn with creatures with big butts, whether it be cube or Naga Sea Witch in wild.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think that like Naga Sea Witch, Steve actually put this really well. That it was a change to the format that defined the format that nobody asked for. So it was kind of cool to see at first, but it's more than a gimmick now. It's kind of this really artificial limiting in the format that you have to be either a deck with pressure or you lose to Sea Witch. And it's really, really binary. It's like how Quest Rogue used to be, as opposed to how Quest Rogue is now, where I think it's a little bit more beatable and a little bit more stable in the format. And even then, that deck has issues, but Naga Sea Witch might be even less interactive because you can fill your deck with anti-aggro cards and then a bunch of 8/8s. So, I don't know. I think that Naga Sea Witch, a change just for variety's sake, makes a lot of sense. The volume and an immediacy with which you saw it, Brandon, I think speaks a lot to what the deck is trying to do, and it's very clearly a spike and spike only. And that is not even fun enough for the players that just want to make big things because it feels like cheating. So I'm not saying that it's too powerful, but I'm saying that it warps the format, and I think that means they have to do something. And Iksar didn't come out and say they would do something, but came about as close as he could get. Now, these other cards, Standard I do feel like is a balanced format with decks that we're bored of, because looking back on it, Kobolds and Catacombs is a super powerful set. Recruit turned out to be a mistake as a mechanic. I stand by that, and I was worried about it before, and I think that it ended up being a problem. And the issue I have with the card Possess Lackey, we talked about this at length in Discord earlier. At first I was like, change Dark Pact, it's not Lackey's fault, but kind of is Lackey's fault. Because what Lackey says in Warlock...
I do think it's Lackey's fault.
What Lackey says in Warlock is that you can't play other demons, you shouldn't play other demons, only play either Voidlord or Voidlord and Doomguard, and those are the only demons. And you think about it, if you take Lackey out of the metagame, if it never existed, but you only have Skull, Skull is a powerful card that still requires risk, investment, time, vulnerability, and it still has to have a bunch of demons in your hand, which you never want otherwise. So
Yeah, and it's also legendary. I think this is a really important point about design space with legendaries in general. I mean, legendaries are just more powerful than any other card, and they can make them that way because you won't see them every game. The games, as demonstrated by the fact that when you play against Cube and they have the Skull of Minari, the game is very, very different. And that is something that Hearthstone typically utilizes its legendaries for well. Occasionally, they venture into that design space in a way that is too game warping. For example, that's a complaint with Keliseth, right? When you draw it, the game is extremely different than when you don't. Whereas I think Skull of Minari is actually well placed in that design space, as you said, as you were making that point, that it is a card you can interact with. It's a card you have to set up for. There's all these conditions that you need to fulfill to make that card be as overpowered as it can be when you just drop it on 5.
And also you can play weapon removal. Like, unlike cards like Keleseth where they just play Keleseth and it's like, well, they drew it. At least you can have like weapon removal in your deck, and if they play the weapon, then and you have the answer right away, then that's a huge, as Hat said, it's a huge investment in your mana and your resources, and you might not be able to use it. So like it could see play, could like, you know, it could come in and out of the format kind of depending on what people are including in their decks.
Yeah, the reason to me that Ridiculous Hat knew so obviously and was very obviously to me correct that Recruit was a mistake as a mechanic is that mana cheating ability that is consistent is just ridiculous. This flows into the card Call to Arms as well. While Call to Arms is a card that I really love to cast, it suffers the exact same problem as Lackey. It is absolutely a cheaty face card. it is.
I think the reason you like to cast it is probably because you win a lot when you cast it. I've noticed that a lot with cards that I'm a big fan of, is when I play the card, I generally win a lot. I don't generally like cards as much as the ones that when I play them I win. So like Call to Arms is really high up on that list. So is Sunkeeper Tarim, which is a card that I honestly think that if you just made it a 3/6 would be a world of difference, because what happens is it's still insanely powerful, it's still really good, but there are just classes that can't deal with that extra point of toughness. So when you shrink a bunch of their creatures to 3/3s and they don't have a hero power that they can utilize, or don't have a card that you can utilize to get over the Tarim, it just feels terrible. Where like if you can make it so that it's in general only going to eat up 2 of their creatures, I think it makes a world of difference.
Would you say it feels terrible?
So I have to be the one that's like sighing on.
You are the straight man in this episode. Yes, yes, you are.
Perfect.
Yeah,
and
I also think.
Go ahead.
I also think that health change would be amazing for the mirror match. When folks talk about nerfs to cards or cards that might be particularly overpowered, that's one of the heuristics that I like to use to figure out if I agree with whether or not that's overpowered. And Call to Arms and Sunkeeper Tarim are really, really good examples of how to use this heuristic well, because if you are playing an even Paladin mirror match, or you were playing a Murloc mirror match before this set rotation, the person that drew that Call to Arms was at a very large advantage, and he or she just could really push that advantage to win. And that's kind of in that mirror match that lends further evidence to a card being problematic if you think it might be in that direction.
Are there any other cards you guys want to talk about on this list? Maybe potential nerfs you've thought of that make a lot of sense. As much as I hate to say it, I could see Quest Rogue getting a nerf, but I don't know that it. I don't know. I feel of course, I feel like if they would have just changed it like I thought they should have changed it back when they first changed it and made the minions 4/4s and kept it up bouncing 4 creatures, I think like the break points for so much of the removal and so much of how things are able to deal with it would have still made it playable. But I think that strategies could end up outvaluing 4/4s, but 5/5 is just such a awkward cutoff for so many decks that it's really hard for decks to be able to deal with that size of a minion. But I honestly can't think of like I heard on, I think it was Value Town when I was listening today, that like changing it to like 6 minions going up another one doesn't really solve the problem, because it just means that it's even more polar. It's just a little bit worse, but still crushes the control matchup if 6 is a number that you can reliably reach, right?
So Quest Rogue exists for a reason and is a predatory deck. If we look at this meta, right, let's ask the bigger question. What are the problems with this meta? In terms of format health, the problems are what you can't play. It's not, is the meta balanced? Because it is. The meta is 100% balanced. Is it fun? Depends who you ask. I would say that you can build a competitive deck from all 9 classes, but really, you're looking at Paladin, Warlock, and Other, right? You're looking at something that beats one of those two. There's not really anything that consistently beats both, and if there is, it loses to Quest Rogue. And Control Priest is probably the closest thing we got. But it's Paladin, Warlock, and Other, because Kibler has been very clear about this. He believes that Paladin's the only deck that can compete with Warlock because it doesn't have to hedge against Warlock. Every other deck has to have Spellbreakers at the ready to beat the Void Lords. But Void Lord, you don't have to worry about it as much as Paladin. You have so many different tools and so many different aggressive resources that you become the aggressive deck that other aggressive decks can't keep up with, because Call to Arms is such a powerful tool and Sunkeeper Tarim is such a powerful equalizer. I think that's a reasonable point. My main issue with Warlock is that Possessed Lackey limits the cards you can play with and against, and I think that's why that card in specific needs to be changed, because it not only keeps your opponents from winning because they have to play silences, and sometimes you go Lackey Pact and they can't interact at all, but also you can't play any of the cool demons in the format. So that's why that card needs to be eliminated, or at least changed from its current incarnation, because it's restricting deck building on both sides, and that's a really problematic thing. As far as Paladin goes, it just has too much stuff. Too many resources. I'm not sure if you make Call to Arms cost 5, or you make it only summon 1 cost minions. I know that card is too good and needs to be changed, and the win rate is bonkers insano, and that spiteful Paladin still played Call to Arms, because of course you want Call to Arms, why wouldn't you play it? And then, when you go further than that, if you
Control
look at...
Paladin played Call to Arms.
But because why wouldn't you? It's draw 3
Yeah.
cards and set their mana cost to 0 this turn. So, the other issue is that we don't know what the rest of the format will look like, and I'm really worried that if they nerf only Paladin Warlock, that we will complain about Druid again, because Druid is secretly really, 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 really good. Really good. Second in win rate on the HS replay. Second, not third, second. It's better than, I think it's better than Warlock right now. And
Only because everybody's hedging against Warlock with double weapon removal and double silence effects in almost every single deck.
sure. I mean,
And it still has a positive win rate somehow.
I think that Druid secretly is really powerful as well, and I would consider a nerf to Malfurion or all the Scarabs, or even just Spiteful. Maybe even just make Spiteful Summoner cost 7, or I saw a nerf Transform itself, which I think is an elegant nerf, because you lose the 4/4 body, and that matters a lot. Also, Happy Feet in the chat, my buddy who I was mentioning earlier, said that Sonya is the only card that you would nerf in Quest Rogue, and I agree that Sonya gives that deck a lot more... It gives it another dimension on how to complete the quest so quickly, because you just play on turn 6, you play Sonya and then the Charger 3 times and you trade, and then you complete the quest for sure. So that card...
The best is Sonya on turn 3, and then you Shadow Step it.
Yeah.
And then next turn you Sonya, play your Chargers, coin, and then it's all set up for turn 5. You just already have quest completed on turn 5.
It's Sonya's the card. Sonya and Scalehide are the cards that were the missing pieces of why Quest Rogue wasn't good last time, after the last nerf. And so I think that if any card gets nerfed, I agree with Happy Feet that Sonya is definitely the reason why the deck has more depth, and Vicious Scalehide is the card that definitely is the reason it has more perseverance, I guess, combined with meta shifts. So I'm not sure what the fix is there, but I agree that just incrementing the quest just makes it only good against a more specific field. So I don't know.
What about you, Tom Locke? Any comments?
Yes. Whenever I have a soapbox to talk about bans, I always say one thing. That one thing is all classic cards should be gone from standard. I just really think Amani Berserker is too powerful right now. It's really contributing to...
That's one of the best cards of the Witchwood, man.
but for it, in seriousness, Quest Rogue would be far less powerful without Shadow Step. I know there's people that I respect that have wanted to get rid of Shadow Step as a good fix to Quest Rogue as well. But I actually really like Hat's approach to whether or not a card needs to be banned. If it's limiting the way that you can design a deck, if it's making it so you have to start every deck that you make, you pick your shaman and then you put 2 spellbreakers in and then you make the rest of the deck, that's really unhealthy. And that's also why I don't really think that Spiteful Summoner is that big of a deal. Another reason that I might think that, though, is the decks that I like to play can really easily beat a Spiteful Summoner. You already got enough pressure to beat it, or you probably weren't going to win against most things anyway. A Spiteful Summoner, is not very good against control decks. The Spiteful decks don't have incredible win rates against control decks. The card Spiteful Summoner is insane against control decks. But it really makes those matchups not unwinnable for Spiteful. They're still bad matchups. So that's one of the reasons where I don't necessarily think Spiteful is a problem, but I do think Cabal, Lackey, Call to Arms, and Terrium are problems because it changes the design space to every Paladin deck has to start with these 3 cards, and then you have to put in 6 minions that cost 2 or less, and then that's already 1/3 of your deck. I really like that line of reasoning, and so I wanted to throw in that statement about Spiteful as well. As a nerf is fine, but I also like having it as a tool to make sure that your mid-range decks don't just get destroyed by control.
Okay. That all makes a lot of sense. The last thing I'll say about this is just that I kind of hope that if they nerf anything, that they nerf fairly evenly across the board, because I wouldn't mind a kind of a full depowering of a lot of these top decks. Just try to bring everything down a little bit to kind of have a building process when the next couple sets are released, since we just came off such a powerful season or set of sets last right before everything rotated. So I wouldn't mind kind of powering everything down, but I worry about powering everything down because it is nearly impossible to power everything down equally. And I think it's probably impossible to get that right. So I would worry that something would rise as more powerful than everything else if that were to happen. But
yeah. My last comment on nerfs is nerf everything until Zoo is good, please. Thank you.
Isn't Zoo always good? That's what we've learned is Zoo is probably good right now, but
I looked at the data yesterday.
No, it's
all right.
And please don't please don't put the viewers through the pain of playing Zoo right now. It's not good enough. Just play cubes, please.
In stable metas that are truly balanced, you can usually get away with playing life tap and minions. But right now the power level is still a little bit higher than that, and there's still way too many Void Lords.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on then. We'll go over everything else pretty quickly. Patch 11.1 is out with the Shudderwock+Lifedrinker animation changes. People were asking for a refund on Dust on Shudderwock because it got limited to 20 battle cries, and I say tough luck. I don't think that they should be giving Dust refunds on that. I believe on Value Town today they said that less than 1%, or it was 1% or less, of the Shudderwocks that have been played had more than 20 battle cries, and I think initially they were gonna limit it at 30, and there was actually like 0% of people with Hearthstone Deck Tracker that got it over 30. So yeah, I don't think that's enough to deserve a Dust refund on that. And then it says it updated the appearance rate of cards to improve class balance by win percentage in the arena. For example, Paladin has a higher than average win rate and should now be closer to average. Don't have much of a comment on this as usual because this is arena talk, and unfortunately for me, I don't play any arena. Do you play any arena, Tomlock?
No, I do not.
Okay. Hat, have you played any arena recently?
I took a Paladin deck and played against 3 other Paladins, and maybe that class needs some help because I don't know if you've looked in the
Help it being
Lightforge.
worse?
Yes, if you look in the Lightforge, Silver Sword is currently the highest rated arena card they have. Period.
Oh.
So I wouldn't
8
be
mana,
surprised.
3/4 weapon.
Yeah, well, it turns out it's the buffing the board plus the 4 attacks. So really, really good combination. So I think that's a good example. I'm glad they spoke to it. And the people asking for Shudderwock dust refunds are like, when they nerfed Leper Gnome, people are like, are you going to give us Mechanier Thermoplug refunds? You're going to refund our Mechanier? It is objectively a worse card, but you're fine. Keep your Shudderwocks.
All right, next news item, off meta spotlight. We got another one of these things which are cool to look at. They have a Moxit or a charged druid, which is charged Devil Sword druid by Moxis, which if you don't have Hydronox, then I guess you could play this. I don't know why you would play this over the Hydronox deck, but sure, it's here. You can play it. It's got druid cards and wild growth. What?
Hydrox were like Oreo knockoffs. It's Hadronox.
Hadronox?
Hadronox. Yeah. I'm thinking about cookies, and if you keep talking about cookies, I'm just gonna go eat them after the show is over, and I can't do that. So.
I got some Thin Mints in my freezer.
That's the best place for those. It's don't you dare start the cookie concede. I will go for hours.
All right. So the next deck is Evan's Even Shaman. It's got looks like this is the version with Corpse Taker, so it obviously has Alakir and Lich King and stuff. Plus a Burlock. Oh wait, no.
It's got Burlock. It's got the Echo Murloc,
Angler.
Ghostlight Angler. It's got Rockpool Hunters because their Primalfin totems make Murlocs, and it's got Gentle Megasaurs.
All right, this deck is pretty cool. It seems like going like Ghostlight Angler a bunch of times and then playing a Gentle Megasaur is probably pretty sweet.
It's just better refuel, right? Like if they wipe your board on turn 6 and turn 7, you hit the hero power and play 3 2/2s for 1 card. It's just more long-term value. Echo is about as good a mechanic can be without being busted, and it feels really, really powerful just to gain virtual card advantage or actual card advantage. I'm playing I've been messing around with a Taunt Warrior, a Quest Taunt Warrior, that the only taunts at play are Stonehill Defenders, Phantom Militias, and Tar Creepers. And that's enough to trigger the quest every game.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So there's that deck. And then the last one is an Odd Warrior deck that they gave credit on this to Trashion, or, yeah. Trashison? Oh, Trahezen.
Trahezen.
Oh man, don't have me read people's names. But anyway, I'm looking in the comments and it looks like the actual creator of the deck was Fury Hunter, and he was kind of mad about it. So make sure he gets credit, I guess. But I don't know. As someone who is not a deck builder, I don't really get the whole. I don't get it as much of like getting credit for the decks, but as far as I know, they gave this credit to Trashison because it was the person that had a close to 70% win rate over a bunch of games in Legend. So a bunch of cool decks for you guys to check out. I don't know which of these decks speak to you the most, Tom Locke.
I love the card Burlock. Any Murloc that has a name that rhymes with the word Murloc is just going to speak to my soul, and Burlock really speaks to me. It is a tempo play. It's an early minion, and it just helps your other minions hit face. It's a card that I love, and this deck makes great use of it. This is absolutely the style of deck that I would love to play. It's a mid-range deck. It's on the board. It's controlling your board presence with its board presence itself. Love this deck. I might actually play it.
Sweet. So let's see, the best card bracket finished from Iksar. That's actually going to be the topic of our Dexplanations today. So we have a lot to discuss there about that. But it looks like, spoiler alert, Dr. Boom was the winner of everything. So that'll be a fun discussion. The next item here is Noblegarden is out, so I hope you go first in the Brawl because that seems to be pretty important. And yeah, this Brawl takes a really long time, so if you're looking for the Brawl to go short, this is not the best Brawl for you.
I actually do have some advice for the Brawl.
Oh, please.
Only play your egg die cards when it is the poisonous effect or the +2 effect. +2/+2 to your minion. All of the other, like, it's okay to play Divine Shield if you're bored, maybe. Or like if you have the +2/+2 or the poisonous, definitely play Divine Shield.
If you get Vex Crow.
Yeah. You get Vex Crow. Just play all your spells. That one you probably didn't need us to tell you. But yes, because you're going to be using your minions to control the board, that's what you need to do to win. The only two effects that do that well are the +2/+2 from the red, and I think purple is the poisonous.
Or green. Might be green.
Or green, maybe. Yeah, purple might be lifesteal.
Yeah,
Lifesteal is really, really bad. Does not help you control the board whatsoever. And the taunt and divine shield are mediocre for controlling the board.
Rush is kind of medium.
Is also medium. I'd rather have taunt than rush most times. This depends. But yeah, my main advice: +2/+2 and poisonous are the only good ones. So wait until you get those. If you don't get either of those by turn 3, hit the concede button and try again, and then you'll get your repack faster.
Because this one takes a while. And then the last news item we have here is Brawliseum came without any notice, grr, and then left, grr. I wish it was here longer. And that's all I have to say about that.
We talked about it pretty extensively early on, so instead of diving too far into that, how about we talk about 2 weeks worth of tournaments, because boy, there's a lot to dive into. Let's go.
It's the grand tournament.
Alright, so we've got a few tournaments that all happened over the last couple of weeks. So HCT Taipei, not this past weekend, not the weekend of the 4th, but the weekend before that, which was the last weekend in April. Switch took first place over Staz. Katsukuri and COJ were 3rd and 4th. G9 Malagos, McWaifu, Treadsred, and Shipping Order were 5th through 8th. In the top 16, some big names there were Zalay, Akumaker, and Rosti. Now, this was the HCT Tour Stop, the last tour stop before prelims took place. That was also the same weekend as the Brotherly Brawl. And Brotherly Brawl was a tournament that our co-host, Appa, won. He won the tournament. Yay. We're really happy. I got a bumper for this. Appa won. The next time we get him on the show, we will 100% talk to him about it. But he took first place over Cap9 in 2nd. Ziphos and friend of the show, JetLaw, in 4th place. Waking Mars, Swagoin, Earl, Swagoin, Edelweiss, and Syntherius were in the top 8, so some good representation there. But our friend Appa won it all, so we're very, very proud of him. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then the EU playoffs started last weekend. This is the preliminary round, so the top 4 qualify to make it to the spring championship. Actually, no, there's the summer championship. They qualify to make it to the summer championships. They don't actually play out the top 4, so you won't see that. It's a do you make it or do you not? So the qualified players were A83650, BunnyHoppor, who's a repeat qualifier, Turna, who I believe is also a repeat qualifier, and Viper, who is a regular tournament competitor. And then that was over Faeli, who is also a regular tournament player, Fino, who is a known legend grinder, Riku97, and Twink. Now, as far as the meta goes, we have a few different metas that we want to dig into, a few different tournaments, but you can kind of see the evolution of the format overall. We'll start with the HCT Taipei. That and the Brotherly Brawl happened at the same time. Now, if you look at the meta here, it gets really, really interesting really fast. It was still the most popular deck at Taipei was Warlock. 8 Q blocks, 5 control Warlocks in the top 16. heavily Warlock based, 13 Warlocks. There were 10 Rogues, 5 were Quest, 4 were Odd, 1 was Miracle. Now, Odd Rogue you won't be seeing a ton of going forward, because the deck really quickly fell out of favor around a week ago. Now, Paladin was number 3. We had 5 Murloc Paladins and 3 Even Paladins, really meant to be more aggressive. 7 Spiteful Druids and 1 Taunt Druid out of the 8 Druids that were there. For Mage, it was 50-50. It was 4 Tempo and 4 Big out of the top 16. Remember, these are top 16 stats. For Priest, we had 4 Mind Blast Priests. We had 1 Combo Priest. For Hunter, we had 4 Baku Face Hunters. For Warrior, we had 2 Baku Control Warriors, a Baku Taunt Warrior, and a regular Taunt Warrior. Now, generally, we had more aggressive lineups in the HCT Taipei format, as you can see from the preponderance of Odd Rogue and Murloc Paladin. Not unexpected in a new metagame. And in the finals, the lineup that won was Q-Block, Tempo Mage, Baku Hunter, and Murloc Pally over Q-Block, Tempo Mage, Baku Hunter, and Quest Rogue. So 3 of the 4 same decks, Q-Block, Mage, and then Face Hunter really preyed on the Warlocks throughout the event. In an interview, Switch said that his plan was to soft target Warlock and Quest Rogue and beat those by going as aggressively as possible. You can see Tempo Mage, Face Hunter, and Paladin all are very easy wins over Warlock most of the time. Now, he banned aggressive decks like Paladins and Tempo Mages, attempted to beat their slower decks, and it got him through the tournament. As far as the Brotherly Brawl, it's a little bit different. Now, these stats are from the top 8, not the top 16, so remember that. But the most popular deck was Mage. All 8 players in the top 8 played Mage. All of them. So we had 4 Tempo, 4 Big, just like HCT Taipei, but that was only half of that meta, and it's 100% of this one. Every single player brought Mage. For Warlock, 7 out of 8, 5 Cube, 2 Control. For Paladin, we had 4 out of the 8. Only half the players brought Paladin, 2 Murloc, and 2 Even. For Rogue, there was only 1 Odd Rogue and 3 Quest Rogues, 4 total Rogues, 3 Mind Blast Priests, only 2 Druids versus the 8 at HCT Taipei. Only 2 Spiteful Druids, no taunts. 2 Odd Warriors, an Odd Hunter, and an Even Shaman. Now in the finals, our boy Appa took Tempo Mage, Q-Block, Quest Rogue, and Spiteful Druid. Very similar to the finalists to Staz's deck, the finals in HCT Taipei, except Spiteful Druid over Baku Hunter. And he took the win over Big Mage, Control Warlock, Mind Blast Priest, and Odd Warrior. Again, beating the control decks is really what this lineup is designed to do. Tempo Mage, Q-Block, Quest Rogue, and Spiteful Druid. It's all about beating control, and that's what Appa was able to do successfully. Now, as far as Europe, I can't give you which lineups won in the finals because there was no finals. There was only the top 4. But for Warlock, we saw 8 out of 8 players brought Warlock, 4 Control, 4 Cube. 7 out of 8 players brought Druid, 4 Taunt, and 3 Spiteful. More control decks are starting to pop up. 5 Mind Blast Priests. 4 Even Paladins, only 1 Murloc. That's 5 Murloc Paladins that were there. And we had 3 Tempo Mages, no Big Spell Mages at all, 2 Quest Rogues, and a Miracle, oddly enough. And then 1 Odd Warrior. So definitely a more control-y and mid-rangey meta. You can see the rise in Even Paladin, the fall of Odd Rogue and of Mage, the rise of Priest, the rise of controlling and slower Druids. So very interesting shift that we see. The NA meta, we have some really cool data that actually our friend Steve put together, wicked good. He is a data architect by trade, and he put together this super cool interactive dashboard so you can see the decks that are going to be played. Warlock is the most popular archetype for sure in the NA prelims that are coming up this weekend. Cube Warlock is the number 1 deck, along with Control Warlock. 44 players brought it. Now, actually, slightly more brought Spiteful Druid. The class as a whole is less popular, but 48 players brought Spiteful Druid out of 64, so it's going to be a very commonly played deck. Even Paladin, there were 45 players, and then Rogue is number 4, with Quest and Odd about split. Quest a little bit more favored. Tempo Mage is the 5th most popular deck, and Mage the 5th most popular class. And then Control Priest number 6. Warrior, Hunter, and Shaman are definitely odd choices, and are not being heavily played. Now, as far as games to watch, we've got a few. First, again, we're going to start with HCT Taipei. I'm going to talk about the final game of the tournament. And I don't mean to spoil it for you, but you know Switch won already. But you don't know how he won. And he was playing Q-Block, and his opponent was playing a Quest Rogue. And Switch won with Q-Block. Yes, it was a fortunate draw. There was definitely Mountain Giant to Mountain Giant into Doomguard that happened. There was an unfortunate discard where the second Doomguard was discarded, which would have been immediately lethal for Switch. but he made some really heads-up plays, optimized the board, was able to stop the quest from developing with Doomsayer, and he was able to set up for, it was turn 9, he had a Void Lord, but instead what he did is he tapped, and he looked for the Pact, and he got the Pact, and he cubed his Doomguard, and he pacted, and he swung in for lethal. It was an incredible game to watch, and he situated himself to win the entire game, because he knew that trying to play it slow would not work, so I'd strongly recommend checking it out. That's the 4th game, the last game of the finals, and resisted the on-curve Void Lord to take the chance and play big and shoot for the trophy, and he got it. So very impressive. For the Brotherly Brawl, we got a couple of games I want you to watch. First, Edelweiss versus JetLaw. And this is one of the 2 games we're going to talk about where it's a masterclass in conserving resources. Now, Edelweiss was playing Control Priest, Mind Blast Control Priest, and JetLaw was playing Even Shaman. Now, have you ever seen an Even Shaman start fatiguing a priest on turn 2? You ever seen an Even Shaman play turn 1 minion, turn 2 roll Healing Totem, and then bump into the Northshire Cleric to make sure they draw the extra card? Because that's how JetLaw started off this game. Started off by forcing his opponent to draw an extra card on turn 2. That's when he started playing for fatigue. Edelweiss had 4 Psychic Screams that game. 4. But Anduin was bottom 5 cards. The Mind Blasts were spent early, and JetLaw had Hagatha. And Hagatha means Psychic Scream just gives me more spells. That's all that means. Primal Fin totem tokens, you want me to have those back in the deck? Fine. So 1 mana, 1/1 that draws me a spell. So JetLaw never ran out of cards or spells. Edelweiss did. And Psychic Scream kind of incurs a debt, and it gets paid off with interest when you hit fatigue. So really impressive to watch how tightly JetLaw managed the game and thought of the game plan on turn 2 that ended up paying off on turn 30.
Something that's amazing is they really emphasize how to play when you draw suboptimally, and that is something that really, really separates good players from players that are mediocre to just becoming good, and that's why I highly recommend watching both of these.
Oh, yes. And Appa, I think, might even have a better example of this. Now, this is a game where Appa didn't win, but he had the worst opening hand I've ever seen in Q-Block versus Control Warlock. And he made it so close anyway that it was Q-Block versus Control Warlock. Appa was the Q-Block, and he was facing down curve plays from his opponent, Cap 9. This is in the finals. And Appa's opening hand had, like, double Cube and double Hellfire and just a bunch of garbage that didn't do anything. And Appa got himself to a point where he was fighting for board and putting pressure on his opponent halfway through the game, in a game that shouldn't have gotten to the halfway point. There was a particular turn where there was a Mountain Giant in play, and Appa's opponent played a Doomsayer, and so Appa cubed his Mountain Giant, and then talled around the cube to set up for 32 points of swing-back damage the next turn, and then Cap 9 top-decked the Twisting Nether, the only one in his deck, just to make sure that those Giants didn't get out of hand. But it was such an incredible setup for... It made a game even that should have been lopsided. So I agree 100%, Brandon, that that's exactly what happened here. And then if we come to one game that you watch, the only game that you watch this week, if you only have time for one game, the game you should watch is ShtanUdachi versus BunnyHoppor, Game 5 of their series in the Swiss. I think it was round 7. And it was in the Swiss, not in the top 8. But BunnyHoppor is playing Even Paladin, and ShtanUdachi is playing Control Warrior. Not Taunt, or it is Taunts, but he mulligans the quest. And no even, no odd, no nothing. Just straight up, I have a bunch of Whirlwinds. I have Scourgelord Garrosh, I have Blood Razors, I have Whirlwinds, I have Warpass, I have Cornered Sentries, and Dry Whisker Armorers. Like, all these cards that just completely hose Paladin. And BunnyHoppor is playing Even Paladin. And I rewatched this game today, and I still don't know how BunnyHoppor got in the position of winning. But BunnyHoppor pulled off this unbelievable game navigation and unbelievable win against a deck that was literally built to beat what he was playing. Strongly recommend watching it, because the second you hear the casters talk about, it was Raven and Sottle, and they called the game a wash for BunnyHoppor a couple times, and then, whoops, there's a game again. Whoops, I guess BunnyHoppor just won? Whoa. So it was definitely worth watching. I would totally check it out. Any of you guys watch any of these 3 tournaments? Brandon, I'm guessing you watched the Brotherly Brawl.
Yes, I did not watch the Brotherly Brawl live because I was in Barbados, but I was demanding updates from my team far more often than I should have been. And ended up watching all the VODs for it. I watched the HCC as well. And yes, the BunnyHoppor game where he beat Control Warrior with Paladin is amazing. There are, for me, there were 3 unique moments where BunnyHoppor made a play. I said to myself, that play seems really horrible. And then about 4 turns later, I figured out why he made that play, and it was genius. And that typically happens once every 10 games you watch somebody at BunnyHoppor's level. Happening 3 times in the same game is crazy. That man played his little BunnyHoppor off.
It was so incredible to watch, and his play throughout the entire tournament shows why he's a repeat prelim competitor. And not just competitor, top 8er. He deserves to be there, and he's one of the best in the game in the tournament mindset. So you could even see the facial expressions where, like, he got a Blood Razor top decked on him, and he felt like the tournament was slipping away from him, but he just kept fighting back. And by the way, he was playing against ShtanUdachi. Like, not just some random. He was playing against ShtanUdachi, who's a really, really good player. EU Summer Champion last year. And he held his own. What about you, Bot? I know you were in China, but did you catch any of this?
The only thing I really caught was all of the messages from Appa as he was winning the Brotherly Brawl, and I was tuned into that as much as possible because I was really rooting for him to win that thing. So I was really happy to see that he did well. And then I looked at his deck lists afterwards, and then I saw all these deck lists from EU prelims, and I'm like, wow. Appa's really smart because all these other deck lists look terrible, and all of the cards, save Lord Godfrey, looked really good from Appa's list. So really glad that he was able to succeed with that list, or with the lists that he chose, even though one of them was Mage. But yeah, so yeah, I can't wait to talk to him about it next week when he's back.
Yeah. It's props to our friend, as always, and all the winners of these tournaments. And next week is the NA playoffs. If you want to check it out, the link to Wicked Good's amazing Tableau dashboard that he built is on his Twitter and in our show notes. And you should look for it everywhere because, oh my god, it's so cool. I could spend hours just digging through this stuff. And it's interactive and usable, which is a pretty special thing. He's a data analyst and dashboard developer by trade, so this is literally his day job. Take the time and review it if you are serious about the about tournament play. And then NA prelims will be this weekend, and we will be reporting on it this time next week. So that's going to do it for our tournament results. Whew, we made it. Thanks for coming along, everyone. No reviews this week in iTunes. If you want to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, it really helps other people find the show, so please take the time to do that if you haven't already. And if you enter in that, you get a raffle for a coaching session. So please make sure to enter in the review. If you enter a review, then you have the chance to win a free coaching session from us. And let's jump into Dexplanations, where we have a topic that for sure will lead to some excellent and fun disagreements.
So this week on Dexplanations, one thing I was acutely tuned into while I was still over in China and have very limited internet connection was this thing that Iksar put together, which was a list of, he narrowed it down to 64 cards of some of the greatest Hearthstone cards ever printed, and he filled out a bracket. He seeded his own bracket and basically put a bunch of polls on Twitter for people to fill out, and kind of did a I guess kind of a March Madness type thing where people would vote and then cards moved on and stuff, and we could kind of figure out what the community, or at least the Twitter Hearthstone community, thinks is the best card of all time. So I figured this week we could look at a bunch of these and kind of go over a bunch of the more controversial pairings, which the way I determined that was whichever cards had the most comments on his post generally were the very controversial card matchups. And I figured by going over these, we can kind of get a better idea how to evaluate cards. This is especially useful when we'll be like when a new set comes out. What were you going to say, Tom? Block?
I was going to say in the Twitter community, that's being called ratioed. That's called
Ratioed?
being ratioed. When there's a lot of comments, much more, when there are many more comments to a tweet than there are favorites, it's
ratioed. Okay.
being
Well,
ratioed.
Yeah, it's if you get a lot of people talking about it, but nobody liking it or interacting with it in a positive way, then yeah, that's an indicator of a controversial topic.
got it. So the one comment on here is, or one of the most important thing to do that you were supposed to do when evaluating these cards is you were supposed to vote based on power level relative to other cards available at that time, which I think is actually very difficult in the sense that a lot of these cards are classic cards. So available at the time is the whole time, all of the time possible. So speaking of cards that have been available for a long time, we can get into the first one, unless you have something to add.
Yeah,
before
just
we
real
start.
quick, I also want to add that there's literally a concept called recency bias to
Yes.
explain this. It's very hard for even somebody considering recency bias to properly evaluate older cards versus newer things. You know, is Michael Jordan better than LeBron James? Those sorts of things.
Yes, and I actually have that in one of my little descriptions here for one of them, but we'll get into the first pairing. I did these in order of oldest to newest, so we'll get into the finals last, but we had Ice Block beating Wild Growth. And my little comment was that Ice Block has an extremely unique effect, whereas Wild Growth, when played on turn 2, is, early game very efficient and very powerful. So a lot of people were wondering why Ice Block made it as far as it did. And we could talk a little bit about recency bias, mainly because it was just moved into the Hall of Fame. So that is something that is stuck in people's heads. And while this whole list did not have any cards that had been nerfed, a lot of people view Ice Block being moved into the Hall of Fame as almost a nerf. But my kind of thought process, because I was one that voted for Ice Block, and my reasoning was that since I had not, other than Flame Waker Tempo Mage, I don't think that there has been a successful mage deck that did not include Ice Block, whereas Wild Growth has been not included in a lot of very successful Druid decks. And while Wild Growth is a defining card of the Druid class, I felt like the fact that it almost felt like you couldn't make a mage deck without Ice Block, versus Druid has Spiteful Druid and Aggro Druid, and yes, Wild Growth is very good in a lot of decks. It didn't feel unique enough to me. It didn't feel, I guess, quote unquote, as powerful. So what did you guys have to think about this specific matchup?
So one of the things that you should think about when you are playing a game of Hearthstone is, how do I win? Wild Growth doesn't have the same effect on how you win as Ice Block does. Ice Block drastically warps every single game where it could possibly be played. And to me, that is an expression of power. I absolutely agree with you. Ice Block is much more powerful than Wild Growth.
It also spawned archetypes. I think that's an important thing to me, is that Ice Block allowed for decks to be viable, whereas a lot of decks that Wild Growth is the best card in it didn't necessarily, you could still play that deck without Wild Growth and it would still have been a deck, is kind of the way I looked at it. What do you think, Hat?
So, okay, first of all, I'm going to preface everything I'm going to say, because there's going to be a lot, that this is an extremely difficult choice, And Ice Block is a card that pisses people off more, so it will probably win this kind of popularity contest 100% of the time. With that being said, Bodicus, I want to talk about the logic you use because I think it's a fairly common fallacy. Would Michael Jordan have been a better player on the Seattle Supersonics than the Chicago Bulls?
Don't asking me a sports
Well,
question.
okay.
Is
Would Michael
a bad
Jordan
idea.
have been a better player on a worse team? He wouldn't have been better, but he would have had to do more. He would have had to carry harder. Because what you're doing by saying that Ice Block is the best card in Mage is you're judging a card by its surroundings.
Did not say that.
Okay, well, it's that there were not successful decks that were not successful decks without it. You're judging Ice Block by the cards it's surrounded by. And that's not fair to Ice Block because you're secretly evaluating Mage versus Druid, and Mage's peaks all had Ice Block, whereas Druid's peaks didn't all have Wild Growth. I agree because I think Druid's a better class and has historically more class design problems. In particular, Choose One is probably the best mechanic they printed in Classic. And I think that's a symptom of Classic and of Druid overall being a more powerful class than most and having a much higher power class power level in terms of the basic cards than any other class that we're looking at here in the game. So evaluating Ice Block by the Mage counterparts and the decks that's been successful, I think might be misleading. Because what you're saying is that Ice Block made these archetypes possible. Well, maybe that means that Mage was bad except for this one outlier. Or maybe that means this one card was needed to prop up a class that was poor, whereas Druid had choices. But if you're talking about the peak power level, what Iksar is saying is the best deck that used this card at its best time, mid-range combo Druid, is better than any Mage deck has ever been. I will say that right now. I think mid-range combo Druid, Forest Roar Druid, is better than any Mage deck has ever been. I am super glad Ice Block exists. It's a unique effect. It's probably a more powerful card, and I think it enables more distinct and discrete strategies. I would be okay with voting for it here. But I think the effect is very, very close, and it's hard to judge because Wild Growth facilitates a normal game, except one player is just a little bit more advantaged in it. Ice Block facilitates abnormal games, and it's really difficult as human beings to evaluate abnormalities versus accelerated normalities. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. I don't think I agree with you because I think it's really hard to say that like Force Roar, like when you're talking about like combo Druid and you have Force Roar and then you're talking about nerfed cards versus like Freeze Mage, which was an archetype forever pretty much. And like, you know, Ice Block is obviously a core part of that. So it's hard to when I'm just looking at the cards, that's kind of the way and that's the biggest problem with this whole this whole bracket is that everybody's going to look at it slightly differently than another person. So like it's somewhat useful to be able to talk through our reasonings for everything, but I think the
So yeah, I will say
in a different way.
I will say, Hat, that I strongly agree with your reasoning, and still strongly believe Ice Block is a better card. However, I find your reasoning extremely persuasive for our next example, and I think that Deathspite is a stronger card than Barnes.
Okay, so the next set we have here was Barnes beating out Deathspite, and I think I agree with both of you that I do believe that Deathspite was a better card than Barnes, but I think that the reason why it won out is because one, people are really tired of seeing Barnes because it allowed for extremely broken strategies and extremely poor, like, I don't know if poor deck design, but just like having to design your deck in a way that was very aggravating when you had just Barnes on turn 3 or 4 versus this card that was just extremely efficient. It was the best for its time. It was just like the best turn 3 or 4 play you could make, and allowed for the Patron Warrior deck, which everybody knows is one of the most strongest decks of all time. So I was definitely in the Deathspite camp on this one, but I can see why the popularity contest of this thing voted for Barnes, because people just really hated seeing Barnes on turn 3 or 4.
I mean, the conversation here is not compare these effects and list which one is more powerful. It's supposed to be which card is better, but one of these cards is flashy and one of these cards is too efficient. Deathbite is too efficient. Barnes is flashy. And when it wins, you get pissed off and you say, oh, they got so lucky. Of course, they had Barnes on 4, and it's a 74% win rate when they have it, and a 55% when they don't, blah, blah, blah. But there were a bunch of pros that were saying, if you've never played a Deathbite on 4, don't at me, for those that speak Twitter. It's playing Deathbite on turn 4 was so powerful, and I can't really explain what it was like for Imp Gang Boss to not be a threat. It's like that matchup was just so good for the Warrior. This card made Control Warrior possible for the entire time that it was around. It made aggressive Warrior decks possible for the entire time it was around. It was good against aggro. It was good against control. It was 4 mana deal 8. It also cleaned up little minions. It also enabled Enrage. It also made Frothing Berserker better. Also made Grim Patron better. It's the synergy combined with the raw power is.
But don't forget Armorsmith.
And Armorsmith. There were so many ways to interact with this card, and even when you didn't do that, it was still good.
Yes, I actually can describe the feeling of playing a Deathbite on 4. You know that feeling when you play an Ice Block right before you're about to win the game? Deathbite on 4 is literally the same feeling. It is exactly I'm setting up for my next turn. You're not going to stop me from doing what I want to do on my next turn. And my next turn is going to push my advantage to the max.
Yeah.
Yep. So
I
I think we all kind of agree that Deathbite probably should have won out over Barnes, but you guys do understand why Barnes won that one.
Oh yeah.
assume.
Oh yeah. And
okay.
this is the jury of popular opinion. We're not talking. I think that people ended up comparing the two effects as opposed to comparing the two cards, and a lot of times the flashier cards won more. The more recent flashy cards often won more than the more powerful but older or less big impact cards.
Correct. All right. So the next one is Call to Arms versus Tunnel Trog.
Ooh.
And this one's hard for me. Like, a lot of these are hard for me because I only kind of played back when these decks, like Deathbite was the best deck or Tunnel Trog was the best deck. So it's hard for me to tell. I think this one's actually really, really close because Call to Arms is probably currently the best turn 4 play, turn 3 or 4 play in the whole game. And Tunnel Trog was definitely the best turn 1 play for a really long time, save, oh man. What was the nerfed card?
Which one?
The 1/2 that got bigger.
Oh, Small Time Buccaneer.
No. Undertaker.
Oh,
Undertaker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Undertaker.
Yeah. Save Undertaker. Tunnel Trog was the best turn 1 play you could possibly have for a really long time. So I expected this one to be close. It was not really that close, but also recency bias. We definitely probably played a big part in this, and also a lot of people are tired of playing against Call to Arms where they've had a lot of time to not be tired of playing against Tunnel Trog.
Well, it's important to note, right, that the poll had no nerfed cards, and Blizzard has changed their nerf philosophy. I think if Tunnel Trog were printed today, it'd be nerfed within 6 months. And Call to Arms will probably not be eligible for the next bracket because it will probably be nerfed. But Blizzard didn't nerf cards the same way back then, so we're evaluating these on different principles. They're both really, really, really good cards. At its peak, Aggro Shaman felt way better than Paladin feels right now. Paladin is a solid, 52, 53% win rate. Tunnel Trog and mid-range Shaman, if we're looking at the peak of the card's performance, there was one deck in the meta. And you could play Freeze Mage sometimes to counter it, or you could play something else and just know you were going to lose. But it was 57 or 58% win rate for mid-range Shaman right after Spirit Clause was printed. Tunnel Trog was so good.
Yes, and in my opinion, it's correct to say that Tunnel Trog Shaman had a 90% win rate back then because either you or your opponent was winning with Tunnel Trog Shaman.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. But yes,
I thought the Paladin was a higher win rate right now. I guess according to the latest versus Data Reaper, it's right around what you said. But I thought it was up in like the 60s. But that's probably right after right after the set came out, and obviously decks aren't refined, etc., etc.
Yeah, or you might have been looking at HS Replay Wild data where even Shaman and even Paladin are both in 66% win rates and everything else is like around 50.
Right. Anyway, you were saying, Tom Locke?
Yeah. Also, I might actually have voted for a call to arms here. It Tunnel Trog did go into the deck that repressed everything in the format because nothing could keep up with Trog. But if the whole Tempo Shaman deck didn't exist at the time, if they had cut 2 cards from that Shaman deck, like Totem Golem and Tuskar Totemic at the same time, it's very possible that a deck like Druid or Mage that could play the 2-mana answers to Tunnel Trog would have been able to compete. But both those decks, if your turn 2 is remove a Tunnel Trog and then their turn 2 is play a 3/4, you couldn't keep up. So yes, Tunnel Trog was the best card in that deck, but I do think that because it had a 1-card answers, I probably would have voted for Call to Arms because Call to Arms doesn't have 1-card answers and can't be easily cleaned up if you have a board I guess Defile or Hellfire can be 1-card answers, but often aren't. So that's to me
it's
very
also
close,
interesting. It's interesting because like I might rate this one as like a 55-45 matchup or even closer, right? But when you vote, you're 100% or 0% for the other one, right? So
Yeah,
like
right.
I might vote for Call to Arms even though I don't think it's that much better than Tunnel Trog, whereas like Hat might be the opposite. Hat might vote for Tunnel Trog, but he knows that Call to Arms is not that much worse if it's worse at all. So it's another interesting thing with these polls is it's hard to truly get to like a good average percentage of like power level, I guess.
Both of these cards should be in the top 4, if not the grand finals period for cards, but they're seeded against each other early on. But I actually was looking while you were talking. The Vicious Syndicate Data Reaper report, the last one before MSG came out, it's Data Reaper report number 28. Mid-range Shaman was 24% of the metagame.
Wow.
It had a 55% win rate. Aggro Shaman was the number 2 deck at 52% win rate, and no other decks broke 51%. So,
wow.
just in
That's
terms,
incredible.
it was an unpleasant time to play Hearthstone, and just in terms of peaks, like we're only talking about peaks here. I don't think we'll see a deck ever peak like that and not get nerfed into the ground immediately. So I think that Tunnel Trog is an artifact of a different time, and if we stuck to if everything was looked at through today's lenses and these cards were released today, Trog would have been nerfed for sure. And so I think it's not a fair comparison because people are going to say Call to Arms will be nerfed, and they're probably right. But saying that Trog shouldn't have been nerfed is inaccurate.
Makes sense. Okay, so the next one did not have a high ratio, but I wanted to put it on here because I felt pretty strongly that it got robbed. And I'm wondering if you guys agree. It's Ice Block versus oh my god, I can't remember the name.
Mad Scientist.
Mad Scientist. And I'm not really sure what happened here, but I feel like it's likely due to recency bias because people have not played with Scientist for a long time. And I did not play a lot with Scientist, but I know that getting secrets out of your deck for free is pretty broken. So don't really know why Mad Scientist lost other than the fact that Ice Block just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, but Scientist was extremely powerful, and it still is extremely powerful in Wild. So, I feel like this should have gone the other way. But what do you think, Tom Locke?
There are kind of 2 pieces to this. The first being that Scientist often got Ice Block.
Yes.
That was literally the first deck that had Mad Scientist was Ice Block, and then 30 minutes later, the second deck that had it also had Undertaker. So Mad Scientist in Hunter is significantly worse than it was in Mage because Mage was getting Ice Block. I agree with you. Scientist is more powerful, but I do not feel as strongly. This is something that I think the cards are more similar to Call to Arms and Trog. They're they're so apples and oranges to me that I would rather have a deck with Scientist in it than I would a deck with Ice Block in it. I would rather be casting Scientist, so that means my vote is going to go to Scientist. But that's a feeling, right? I don't have more to it than explaining why people might have voted for Ice Block.
What do you think, Hap?
Tom, you're wrong. It's Mad Scientist. It's not even close. Mad Scientist and Tempo Mage did not play Ice Block. It got either 2 mirror entities or 1 mirror entity and one counterspell, and that was more than good enough. It pulled a card out of your deck. It gave you the mana for free. It was a 2-drop that your opponents didn't want to kill. It lived in the world of Shield of the Minibot, where the 2/2 lined up super well with the ping. It did everything you needed a card to do, and it was super efficient at it in Mage and in Hunter, and just imagine what this card would be like in Container with Explosive Runes. Good God almighty, I'm glad we don't have to deal with that. Scientist is too good. It is a card that is too good.
I realize now why I don't think Scientist is as good. Is that I was playing a lot of Zoo at the time, so I could play around Scientist more, so I don't have quite those specific memories that you do. But I was still voting for Scientist over Ice Block. Just I am wrong in how powerful it was. Absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, they're two good cards, but one is more gooder.
All right, so I'm just gonna let you guys talk about this next one because I'll have a bit to say on this card later. But Tarim won over Mysterious Challenger. Go ahead, go ahead, Hat. What do you think? Did you agree with this?
I stand by that Mysterious Challenger was only a good threat because it was preceded by 5 design mistakes. It's the 1-drop that was broken was either Secret Keeper in that deck only or Avenge. Avenge was super powerful.
Yeah, Avenge was super.
And then 3/2 Knife Juggler or Minibot, and then Muster, and then Shredder, and then Belcher, and then that's why Challenger was good, because you played those 5 cards before, and Challenger...
On 5
well, I know we're
great.
talking about peaks here, and I know that Challenger was better in that deck when it was followed by those cards, but Challenger was around for the year after and saw no play. So, I think that Challenger was surrounded by a shell of really powerful cards and was the great finisher. Now, most of those cards are neutrals, right, except for Muster, and Muster is the main one that really kicked that chain, and Minibot as well, kicked that chain of cards into the next level, but Tarim has been an inclusion in literally every Paladin deck that has been made since the second he came out, and will be until they nerf him or rotate him. And
except for Odd Paladin, you have to say that, but you literally played Stonehill Defender to get Tarim, and for anybody who said it wasn't your first pick off of Stonehill Defender, obviously does not play Paladin, because especially in Odd Paladin, Tarim is the best card by a mile.
And without access to Tarim, guess what happened to Odd Paladin? It's not good. You can't play it.
Yep.
It's I think that in terms of, I don't know if Tarim has a single deck peak that I can point to where it had the kind of penetration that Secret Paladin did. But if you take every Paladin's deck performance since the card came out, I think that's enough of a consistent... It's a clear influencer on the class in a way that we haven't seen in a long time, of one card making a class good across different strategies. I guess the closest thing would be Ice Block. You just put it in every Mage deck for a while there, and it made the Mage decks better. But on the other hand, it's not that Mage is generally lower power or more specific in its approach, propped up by Ice Block. It's that Paladin is good and then gets Tarim.
Yeah.
So I think it's not actually even that close.
Yeah, so in my opinion, Tarim not only defined a meta, but also made a deck viable during a meta where that deck should not have been viable, which is pre-nerf Jade Druid. Like, you could play Murloc Paladin because Tarim was good enough to prop that deck up and allow you to still win games, is kind of my thought process on it. What do you have to say, Tom Locke?
Yes, I strongly agree with Hat's logic. I would just add that Mysterious Challenger did not come back from if you're losing on board by a lot and you play Mysterious Challenger, you just lose. You can't. It doesn't come back that much. It shuts the door, but it doesn't come back. Tarim, against some decks, as Boddick has alluded to earlier when we were talking about card nerfs, some decks have to trade 3 minions into a Tarim. That is a huge, huge comeback mechanic. And as Boddick just said about the matchup against Jade Druid, it's the same thing. It just allowed Murloc Paladin to win games it shouldn't have by itself. And that is an incredibly powerful effect.
Yeah, I'll have more to say about Tarim later, but let's get into the next one, which was Ice Block beating Ultimate Infestation. And the only question I had for this one is, how did both of these cards make it this far? I understand that both cards are very good, but wow, this was towards the end, and I was really surprised that they won. But I saw that UI had a relatively easy part of the bracket. If I look at the cards it beat, I wasn't super surprised at what cards it beat, but both of these made it pretty far in the bracket, and I was not expecting it. I don't know. What do you have anything? You have anything to say about this, Tom Locke?
Yes, 10 mana cards will never be the most overpowered cards in the game because you have to get to 10 mana, and if you're playing against me, that's only going to happen in like 1/3 of your games. So,
Well, and UI was good because it was a 4-drop for a little while. Like,
yes,
that was
exactly.
That's what people remember, is that when UI was a 4-drop, it was really good. But like, the card that was the problem there was not UI. And yeah, the card that should have won this bracket is Mad Scientist. I take Mad Scientist over UI every single time, and Mad Scientist lost to Ice Block. So, in reality, Ice Block just delayed the inevitable for a turn and then ruined my experience. So I guess it did exactly what I expected to do.
All right. So the next one is Thaurissan beats Gul'dan. This one had a lot of comments. I wasn't really surprised at this, but this is another classic of like Gul'dan made it really far, and it's as Tom Locke said, 10 mana cards are never going to be the most powerful card, and I agree with him. I think Gul'dan does a lot of really powerful things that people are really annoyed about right now, but overall it's a 10 mana card, whereas Thaurissan makes, kind of like with Ice Block, it just makes these strategies that can't exist without it. It does these just crazy powerful things, and I don't know. I was expecting Thaurissan to go really far. It obviously did, but yeah, that Thaurissan is one of my top 5 like most powerful cards of all time, just because of the effect that it has and the fact that it's a must kill. Like, you absolutely have to kill it the turn it comes down, or the game is almost assuredly lost. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, unsurprisingly, I still agree with myself about 10 mana cards. I'll pass it right to Hat.
I've been thinking about Thaurissan a lot lately since this poll came out, and how powerful it really was. And in retrospect, I think it's still difficult to get a read on it. I remember the feeling of, well, that Thaurissan needs to die, right? It was a joke that some minions had Thaurissan, which was, this minion doesn't have taunt, but pretend like it does. Where you would just make the worst possible trades on board. It's like how people overreact to Vicious Fledgling now. And I think that's probably the reason why I'm having trouble parsing Thaurissan now, because Vicious Fledgling gets overreacted to, and I don't think 100% of the time needs to be killed on turn 3. Thaurissan, I do think, needed to be killed on turn 6 when it came out, or turn 3, as was the case against some Druid opponents that I played against. It is a powerful effect. I can't point to any one deck and say that you needed Thaurissan for it to be effective. I can point to a bunch of decks and say, when you play Thaurissan, this deck gets better. It's easier to win, it's faster, it's smoother, it's more consistent. I can't point to any deck where I say, if you didn't draw Thaurissan, you lost, and that deck was still worth playing. So I don't know. I feel that looking at Thaurissan versus some of the other cards we've talked about so far, I think I'd pick Mad Scientist over Thaurissan. I think I'd pick Sunkeeper Tarim over Thaurissan. I don't know about Ice Block. I do think Tunnel Trog would be the win over it. And so just in terms of what I remember of the card and the power level of it versus the effect it actually had in the game and on deck building, it didn't really impact deck building, and maybe that's where my block is now, thinking about how powerful cards are now, that they influence how you assemble the strategy you bring into the game, not you play Thaurissan so your strategy gets better. I think Thaurissan wins here, but I think it's close, because I think Gul'dan is also a really, really powerful strategy enabler. It's life gain, it's a board, and it's a game ender hero power. And I think it's as close as a 10 mana card gets. Maybe on par with N'Zoth, but I think it's even better than N'Zoth. As close as a 10 mana card gets to being game defining. Because it stops the attack, in part due to the demons you're bringing back, or it's a win condition by itself, in part due to the demons you're bringing back. And the hero power is super, super great, and the 5 life matters a lot. I don't know, I think this is actually surprisingly close. I would still vote for Thaurissan, but I would think about it for a while.
Yeah, to push you a little bit more towards Thaurissan, I will say it did enable half of the handlock strategy, which it used against certain matchups, that half of the handlock strategy being the Leroy power overwhelming, faceless manipulator combo.
Right, but you could play that with Arcane Golem back then. It's Eloise played the Arcane Golem version. She called it just Combo Warlock, and that was, 4 less damage, but still a good amount of damage. I agree that particular build needed Thaurissan with some cards, and I think Reno Lock is the best example of that, or Combo Handlock, or both. Thaurissan did make that strategy possible, which is a good point.
Yeah, it could have existed without Thaurissan, of course, but that particular line of play was really enabled by Thaurissan, and to handlock, and this is like very in the weeds. Sorry, everyone. But the 2 handlock at that moment in time, the ability that 4 damage mattered a lot more than 4 damage matters now. There's a lot more incidental healing now than there used to be. There's a lot, just that 4 more damage was how you could make sure you killed priest. It was how you made sure you could kill druid, things like that. So that 4 damage was more impactful back then. That was all I wanted to add.
All right. Well, while we're still talking about Thaurissan and how you guys seem to be a little lukewarm on it, I'm probably a little higher, but Dr. Boom actually beat Thaurissan in the next round, and I don't know how I feel completely about Dr. Boom. I'm not surprised that it ends up winning the whole thing, but at the same time, like, I don't know that it is the best card. I don't know that I would have. I think I'm pretty sure I picked Thaurissan over Dr. Boom because of how powerful an effect it has, and Dr. Boom feels like what I've heard a lot of people say is just stats, even though I know that it definitely defined a whole format in the sense that it was in every single deck from super aggro to control. So, and then everybody was also playing BGH. It's a large part of the reason that BGH got nerfed, I believe, if I remember correctly. But I don't know, what did you guys think? Were you expecting? Obviously, Hat was expecting Mad Scientist to be somewhere around here. I think
that would have been interesting, at least.
Mad Scientist versus which one? Which one would it have gone up against?
Boom, for sure.
Boom.
Oh
okay.
yeah.
And
Boom is so okay. Name a 7-drop that hasn't been nerfed that's been good.
It definitely is a spot that has not been filled. Obviously, Bone Mare
nerfed,
which I obviously was nerfed. I'm aware, but yeah, I don't know that Bone Mare. I still don't know that Bone Mare needed to be nerfed.
Gore Howl.
Yeah, it's not a drop. It's a weapon. Like, it's probably the closest we're gonna get, because the top 3 are Dr. Boom, Ancient of Lore, and Bone Mare. And those are the 3 7-drops that have consistently seen play. There will probably be somebody writing in, and if you write in, please let us know of which 7-drops I missed. I'm sure there's something, but the 3 that jump to mind have all been nerfed. Or 2 have been nerfed, and 1's Dr. Boom. It's
Archmage Antonidas.
Antonidas, okay. That's a good answer. So, both are game-defining, but Dr. Boom was, first of all, was in everything. Format-defining, made everybody put BGH in their deck. And yeah, you could say Ancient of War was pretty good for a long time. Dr. Boom was stats in an era of stat inefficiency. Dr. Boom was removal in an era where removal didn't really come packaged with minions. Dr. Boom was on an even or a head board, it slammed the door. On a behind board, it could help you catch up because of the boom bots. And at the time, there was no other threat that really competed anywhere near as much as Dr. Boom did. I think that really Thaurissan was an enabler. Dr. Boom was a strategy by itself. And I think
Yes,
I
that
think
is the key.
ubiquity of the card at the time is really what propels it over the top for me. Playing Boom on 7, we had the argument before about Barnes versus Despite. Despite on 4 and Boom on 7 had a very similar feeling of just, I'm going to win now. And it's going to be, and Dr. Boom wasn't necessarily flashy, but every time you saw one on turn 7, you said a word that we won't say in this family-friendly podcast. And I'm not going to say that Barnes didn't have that. I'm not going to say that Thaurissan didn't have that. But I really think that Boom as a universal strategy was just so much more powerful that it has to get the nod here.
Okay.
Yes, it's absolutely the key. Boom wins you the game. Thaurissan helps Thaurissan helps your other cards win you the game. Just that it's a 1 turn difference between when you get to start winning and you start winning with Dr. Boom right as soon as you play it.
I think my biggest thing with that I'm noticing just over the course of all of these cards, the ones that I rate higher are the ones with very unique effects, which is why I had wanted Tarim to win the whole thing, which obviously it was in the finals, so that's good, but obviously Dr. Boom beat it out. I wanted to bring up something here. I don't want to dive too far into it because I think we can do a whole podcast episode about it, but it's this Magic the Gathering. It's kind of a Magic the Gathering term. It was created by another Magic the Gathering podcast called Limited Resources by this guy named Brian Wong. It's called Quadrant Theory, and it's a way about evaluating cards, mainly in the limited format, but for us it actually works okay for the constructive format in determining how good a card can be without having played it a lot or understanding why a card is extremely good. So Quadrant Theory essentially has 4 sections of it. I'll go over them real quick. It's development, and then when board is at parity, when you are ahead on board, and when you are behind on board. And these are the different ways to kind of determine whether a card is good. And so a card like Tarim, if you look at it, when you are ahead on board, which is the least important of the quadrants, but when you are ahead on board, card is extremely good because it almost always ends the game on the spot. And then when you are at board parity, card is also insane because you usually get to make some value trades and then Tarim and then make some more trades with like the bigger minions and kind of breaks board parity really easily. And then when you're behind on board, a lot of times Tarim is the only card that can possibly get you out of the situation because their minions are gigantic and yours are tiny. And another thing about Tarim is that it's just really hard to play around because you basically have to remove all their minions every time, even if you're running your giant minions into tiny minions, because if they play Tarim, all of a sudden all the minions are the same. So I really wanted Tarim to win. I do kind of understand why Boom ended up winning, and it won by quite a bit. I think it has a mix of story, like people telling the stories of how good Boom was, and a mix of how good Boom actually was, because it was obviously one of the best cards. But if you put Boom through Quadrant Theory, it actually does pretty well too. Slightly worse in the when you're behind category, which is the most important. But overall, both of these cards kind of ace Quadrant Theory quite a bit, other than the development part, which is hard to tell because they're a 6 and a 7 drop. And also, as we were saying, the more expensive cards with very flashy effects ended up doing pretty well in this thing, where I know Zalay was preaching that he needs to remind people that 1 and 2 drops are really defining in Hearthstone. So I don't know, what do you guys have to think about kind of this final pairing and the whole thing overall?
An important part of Quadrant Theory, I think, actually is that neither quadrant is more important than the others. And in fact, I would say Dr. Boom is better in development because it develops your winning strategy. You cannot win on Tarim alone. you have to have developed before you play Tarim for Tarim to be good in the development quadrant. And I probably would have voted for Dr. Boom because I would have been trying to compensate for recency bias. So that means that I feel Tarim is a little bit better, a little bit more powerful. But there's like you said about the story, there's no story better than, I played Dr. Boom, my opponent played Dr. Boom, I traded my Boom bots for all 3 of his minions. It was an amazing feeling. Almost as good of a feeling as rolling 4 imps on your implosion. The emotional feeling of playing a Dr. Boom, from my memories, is that it felt much better to play Dr. Boom on 7 than it does to shut the door with a Tarim or to help myself lose the game a little bit more slowly than I would have.
What do you think, Hat?
This is the closest one we've talked about so far. And I think that both cards are deserving of this spot, of being in the finals. 2 data points sway me a little bit. First of all, Dr. Boom did not influence your deck building. You opened a deck, you put it in, and then you went about your day. Now, I don't know if that's a point for or against Dr. Boom. It actually could be used as both.
Right.
Tarim does influence your deck building a lot. A lot. And in the decks where you use him, if we're talking about the peak power level argument, he is 100% a developmental threat because you're playing them in decks that have board. And in fact, Paladin decks without board did not exist while Tarim was around. And even Control Paladin had board. Don't think for a second that deck didn't. Again, this is the deck that played Call to Arms when it had access to it. Whether you're talking about the Lanessa Sunsara variant or the where you had Pyros and Equalities, like always. There was another variant of Control Paladin that played Tarim and Tyrion and Uther the Lightbringer, but wasn't combo, it just was Control Paladin before Call to Arms was printed in the KFT metagame. You change your deck to make Tarim better. And I think the card was so warping when it was good and leaned on that it was worth doing that for. And that I think is a vote for Tarim. The other thing that I remember is that the month after Ungoro came out, I was playing Murloc Paladin Legend, and it was built by a guy named Slimsh who plays in THL. And I asked him, what do you keep in the opener? He said 1 drops, 2 drops, and Tarim. And that says a lot when your Divine Favor aggro deck keeps Tarim in the opener. And I kept it, and every time I did, I won. So, it's so close. And Dr. Boom on 7 was so powerful, but I have to give it to Tarim because I think the card was so defining in its class, and at all times it was around that it influenced deck building in a way that I can't say Boom did. Boom was just a really good card, really, really powerful and really good, but it wasn't a strategy in and of itself. It changed the format maybe, but not the class, not how decks were built, and not the format in the same way by extension, just more BGHs, more Booms, and less big minions.
Yeah, and I guess the other hard part about this is that it's a class card versus a neutral card. So it's really hard to evaluate the fact that Dr. Boom was in every single deck, right? Because it could be. Whereas, like, if Tarim was a neutral card, no, it probably doesn't make every deck, but it probably makes a lot of them, right? Like, it's really hard. It's hard to fully parse that, I guess, at least for me. So I don't know. Tarim also might have some recency bias on my end, and I don't know. I had Tarim over Boom, but overall, I really enjoyed the experience of seeing how this all played out, and kind of makes me rethink a lot of how I look at cards. So overall, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make that call of if Tarim were neutral, but I think the meta would just look so different because it would be so commonplace that it would warp the format in the same way that Dr. Boom had BGH and everything.
Right.
But anyways, we could talk about this for a while, but it's been 2 hours, so we're going to call that a show. thank you so much, everyone, for listening in so far. We're just gonna wrap up here and make sure that you know where to find everybody. But the question that we ask every week, you know what it is.
How long can this go on?
But I'm not sure if you heard that last week, but it was
I did.
yeah. It's the
I remember now, but I didn't know where it was going. It felt like it was going somewhere else because I didn't remember the last one. It's
We've-
been a while.
We've got some good old creepy. How long can this go on? It's because we're stuck in the Witchwood. So, thank you for the whisper. I appreciate that. Also, thanks to Stefan L for letting us use his cover. Check him out on his channel, linked in our show notes. Big thanks to Hearthstone Top Decks and BeerBrick.com for Decklists and analysis. Old Guardian for his tournament analysis reports are super duper helpful. Wicked Good for his Decklist tableau crazy dashboard thingy. Hearthstone Tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs. Show notes for this week's episode are on our website, CoinConcede.com. You can support our show at Patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at Twitch.tv/CoinConcede Join our community chats in our Discord at Discord.CoinConcede.com. Write into our email at CoinConcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. Like, share, and follow us on Facebook. And if you would like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.CoinConcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Calum, Viriatus, and...
It's so fluffy!
Fluffy! Bodicus, who would you like to coin concede to this week?
So I would like to anti-shout out to Hat and Wicked Good because I was in China minding my own business, and then I look in the Discord and they're talking about this game called Mario Rabbids, and it was on sale, so I ordered it, and then I get back and I'm like really wanting to play Hearthstone, and then I like don't do as well, and I start playing Rabbids, and I'm having a great time playing Rabbids, and so they were taken me away from playing Hearthstone. But then on the other hand, I want to shout out Hat and Wicked Good because Hat gave me some great deck ideas. So I'm really excited to start playing Hearthstone again. Really happy to do that. And also Wicked Good for his Off Curve episodes. I started listening to a bunch of podcasts again, really getting back into Hearthstone. So I'm excited once again to play Hearthstone, and then double shout out to Hat because I'm going to BlizzCon thanks to him. I was trying to buy tickets at my grandma's birthday party in the restaurant. I'm like trying to purchase tickets and it didn't work, but thanks to Hat, I'm going to be going, so I'm excited.
Yay! Yeah, I was on Universe waiting for. I was in line. I assumed it was just going to time out after 7 minutes, and then my computer dinged. I was like, "What the hell was that?" I got tickets, and then I bought tickets, and then I had tickets, and it was not at all what I expected. So, yeah, there will be another live episode at this year's BlizzCon.
Ooh,
Very
it's gonna be
exciting.
awesome. I can't wait.
Looking forward to it. Tom Luck, how about you? How many coin concedes do you have? You want to share with us today?
Yeah, I'm gonna coin concede to my 5-month-old. He just got his third tooth in, and he's been a real champ about it. Only crying like for 2 hours a day about it. It's pretty good. Also going to coin concede to Team Swagoin. All the players have really been stepping up the way that they talk about cards, the way that they take the game seriously, and I'm incredibly proud of our performance at the Brotherly Brawl, and I'm very excited for our future.
Yay, friends. Thanks for that,
Absolutely.
and thanks for being on, Brandon. I really appreciate it. As for me, there's really way too many people to thank in the community for a couple things this week. For the support that everyone gave each other during the last difficult couple of weeks, I think it's been really exceptional how people have come together. Big shout out to Ephira. She is putting together a Badass Women of Hearthstone tournament. Check her out on Twitter. It's a really cool movement. Big thanks to everyone involved in Team Toast over at UHL and in getting together and playing to make sure that the matches get carried out. Big thanks to everyone who wished me a happy birthday. That happened this week. I'm older now than I was before. So big thanks to all of you who did that, especially Kick Punch. Thank you for the packs. Super duper nice. You didn't have to do that, but we got some good epics and rares, so thank you very much for that. And big thanks to the sushi restaurant that I went to. I'm still full, even though I ate on Tuesday night and it's now Thursday. But boy, it was good. Oh my god, it was so good. And yeah, that's all of our coin conceits for this week, so let's make sure we know where to find our friends. Tom Luck, where can people find you?
Yes, I am most active on Twitter at Swagoi_Tomlock. You spell Swagoi Swagoi. You can follow everything Swagoi does on Facebook.com/Swagoi Gaming. We also have our website, www.swagoi.com. You know that I'm old because I just said www. That is where you can find me. Thank you very much for having me on. It was a blast.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
for coming on. It was great having you.
Agreed. What about you, Bot?
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm at BoticusHS. And then I'll be back to streaming this weekend. I was gone in China, as I've said multiple times, and I'm excited to play some Hearthstone this weekend. That's twitch.tv/Boticus. I'm also going to be casting some UHL. Tom Locke also does some casting for UHL, so make sure you follow that channel. That's twitch.tv/UnitedHS League. Lots of awesome matches going on there. It's a blast every time I get to do that. So I just did a cast with Brasky this week, and that guy is darn good at casting. So it was a lot of fun. And I cast a hats match, so definitely check it out.
Yeah, except I made you all fall asleep halfway through because I was playing a hard control lineup, and the games took a little while, despite my characteristic fast play style. But yeah, it's big fun over there on UHL. Pretty much everyone on our podcast is involved with it, so I definitely recommend checking it out over at United HS League on Twitter. You can find Cora casting Hearthstone. She's also on Twitter at SongbbirdHS. You can find Appa on Twitter at AppaHS. You can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat. Find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/RidiculousHat. If you're listening to this live, I will be streaming immediately after this show. If you're not listening to this live, you should really listen to this live. It's so much fun. Even though our days and times and hours sometimes are a little different week to week to make sure we can accommodate everything that goes on. And that's going to be our show today. So, until next time, keep calm and rogue on. And if you see us on the ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede!
Take cold comfort in your victory. You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death.
You have triumphed.
This time, this hunt is yours.